There we go. That's recording now, Tom. If you just want to give me a shout when you want the slides changing over.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we'll go to the first one now. Okay, so training philosophies. So I've put a little definition there of what a philosophy is. So a theory or attitude that acts as a guiding principle for behavior. So it's basically an ideology that you follow. It can be relative to anything that you turn your hand to. So you might have a training philosophy, you might have a philosophy for the way you do work, whatever it is. You will have your own ideology and your own way to go about things. So when we're talking about training philosophies, we're specifically thinking about ideologies associated with the gym and how we go about our gym work and what we do in the gym. And we've put the Silverjack's philosophy. So what is the Silverjack's philosophy? Bit of a wordy one. Progressively overloading the body through the exemplary execution of basic movements under heavy load. Basically, as it says, lift safely and as heavy as you possibly can. So we're trying to progressively overload. So we'll go a bit deeper into that shortly. But progressively overload meaning over time, increasing the volume, whether it be weight, increase reps, increase sets, decrease rest time, whatever it is, increasing the volume over a period of time to bring about change in the body. Exemplary execution of basic movements, basically meaning that we aim to have our clients execute perfect form. So from the off, whenever we start working with anybody, it's a case of let's make sure that you can do these movements, these basic movements safely, correctly, and executing it in a way that is going to activate the target muscles. Once we do that, we then move on to doing those movements under a heavy load. So first things first, get yourself safe, get yourself able to do the movements, and then moving on from there, we then start adding the weight on and really challenging people. Which, if any of you have worked with us before, or anyone who knows anyone who's worked with us, we will generally, depending on your gym experience, it will generally be a higher rep sort of introduction to the gym. So we'll teach you the basic movements. It'll be higher reps, get you to properly activate your muscles and feel those movements properly. And then as time goes on, we'll increase the weight, and the reps generally tend to come down as the load increases, obviously accommodating for the fact that we are putting the body under a lot more stress through the increase of that weight. Jack, if you want to move on for me there. Okay, so popular philosophies. Put a few of them down here that you've probably heard of before.
But did you see, like, I joined it like twice.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah, so popular philosophies, as I say, I put a few of them down there that you may well have heard of before. If not, I'll talk you through them now anyway. Just move that down so it doesn't look like I'm a floating head. So progressive overload. So I've just briefly talked about progressive overload there. So you may well have heard of this before. It's very popular in the weight training, within the weight training world, if you want to term it that. The official description definition of progressive overload: the gradual increase of stress. Gradual increase of stress placed upon the body during weight training. The most common and this is the most common and most widely utilized that you'll probably find people using. All progressive overload basically means is we are over time increasing the overall volume. So volume being whether that be increasing the weight, increasing or decreasing the reps in relation to the weight, increasing or decreasing the sets, decreasing the rest time, all contribute to overall volume. And eventually what we're looking to do is progress each week, whether it be we have upped the weight or we have decreased the rest time, whatever it is, we're making a certain movement, certain exercise more difficult for ourselves so that we can create more stimulus in doing the movement and hopefully therefore bring about more change as we do that over an extended period of time. Next one I've got down there is volume. So it does what it says on the tin, or it is what it says on the tin. Volume being a higher amount of sets and reps. The idea being to maximize blood flow to the target muscle. So we'll probably use, or we tend to use high volume with beginners to the gym, mainly because if you're using a lower volume in order to bring about the same amount of stimulus, you would tend to use a higher weight. And obviously, if people are new to the gym, we can't just throw them on a leg press or a squat or whatever it is, lash a load of weight on and go, right, do 8 reps. So we'll start off with higher volume to get people used to those movements and executing those movements properly. For more advanced lifters, so many bodybuilders might employ volume training. There's a famous or a well-known system called FST7 that you might want to look up if you've got a bit of spare time. But FST7 is basically based around volume training, whereby you would do 7 sets of 10 with a very short rest time in between. Again, the idea being just to maximize blood flow to that target muscle. And I think FST7 is largely based around the fact that the more blood you force into that muscle, the more the muscle fascias are forced to stretch, and therefore the intention being to bring about growth through that stretching of the muscle fascias. The muscle fascia just being the actual physical exterior of the muscle within your body. Maximal weight. So maximal weight, low volume, less reps and sets, generally aiming to reach a 1 rep max or anywhere from 1 to 5. So this will generally be your strength training sort of philosophy that people are working towards. Maximal weight, you'll also is associated with powerlifting. So anyone who does powerlifting, they will know that they are working up towards a maximal set, whereby they can lift what their body is physically able to lift for 1 rep. And that is the general philosophy of powerlifting, is just being able to hit that 1 rep max and lift as much as possible for those very low rep ranges. People will tend to work up, maybe do a few warm-up sets, and then they will work towards those 1-2 rep max sets and maximally lifting during those sets. And then the last one there is just a little bit of a joke, which you will obviously find most teenage lads, or often I find middle-aged men as well, tends to be bald middle-aged men, bro lifting. So that's just training chest and arms every single day. Jack, if you want to move on for me, please? Unless you've got anything to add. Okay. Oh. This is why you don't leave Jack in charge of the technology. Right, so developing your philosophy. So obviously I've given you a few ideas there of popular philosophies that have been adopted throughout the weight training and gym world, as you might term it. Obviously it's important to develop your own philosophy, because what works for one person is not going to work for another. So as I put there, no 2 people are the same. What works for me doesn't work for Jack. What works for Jane might not work for Brendan. Whatever it is, doesn't work. Not everything is going to work for you. So it's you have to find your own training philosophy and develop your own training philosophy. Now, you can try popular methods and find out what works for you. So I've given you a few ideas, and then you might want to go and research some other things that you might want to try. When you are trying out those methods, it's important to give them a few weeks for your body to adapt to the stimulus. So doing something for 1 week and going, oh, that didn't work, or I haven't grown, or I haven't put any weight on, or I haven't lost weight, whatever it is. Doing it for 1 week is not giving your body enough time to adapt to the stimulus that you're providing it with. Okay, so as general rule, we would say anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. After 8 to 12 weeks, if you've been monitoring your progress throughout that time, and you get to the end of that period, you will be able to see a marked difference at the end of that period, or indifference, depending on how well that training system has worked for you. So it's always important to give your body time to adapt to the stress that you're putting upon it, and reviewing your results as you go along. And that's the best way to find out what's going to work for your body and your body type. Okay, another point there, just because, sorry, Jeff. So Yeah, just the last 2 points there. So as I've mentioned, no two people are the same, and what works for one person doesn't work for another. So just because something works for somebody at the gym, and they might have had a chat with you and said, "Oh, try this, try that." There's always that one person who thinks they know more than everyone else, who thinks they know best. Just because it works for one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And always listen to the experts, coaches, science-backed information, that kind of thing, and not just people on the gym floor. To develop your own ideologies and your own philosophies. Okay? So, why should you have your own philosophy? I've talked through a few points already. The main point that I've put down there. So you have a system that works for you and your goals, and so your gym work is aligned to you personally and not based on someone who bears no relation to you at all. So it's all well and good going online and searching, chest workouts, chest and shoulder workouts, or whatever it is that you search. It's all well and good going and taking information from the internet, taking information from wherever, and applying it to yourself. But it's about trialing and taking things from different philosophies, different systems that may well work for you, and adapting them to fit yourself. You may enjoy maximally lifting one day. You then may enjoy doing some I can't even think of the word now. Doing progressive overload training on other days. Some people like to do that. Some people like to throw in, strength-based days within their progressive overload system so that they can, improve their strength as they're also trying to aim for that hypertrophy sort of range, which is something we may touch on later on. But yeah, it's just always important to figure out what works for you and therefore base your schedule around what works for you. And so you're not wasting time in the gym, because if you go in and you haven't got an idea of what you want to do and you haven't got an idea of what works for you, then ultimately you're going to end up wasting a lot of time in the gym. And obviously we don't want to be giving out all that effort into our gym work for very little reward. Okay, you want to move on for us, Jack? Cheers. So Jack's going to take over now and talk about the nerdy, snidey part.
Cheers for that, Tom. Yeah, so that's the philosophy, sort of covering how we approach training our clients as well. Going to get into the biomechanics now. So there's going to be 2 parts to the biomechanics. Firstly, assessing your own body, your structural setup, your design, how your body is, and how you can understand your own body and put that into your training to get the most from it, which I personally find a lot of people just aren't aware of their own body and aren't aware of how their body will affect certain movements and certain exercises. Then we'll get into exercise mechanics, how to change loads, how loads change through movements, and what impact that has on your muscles. So go into the assessments. We assess all our clients. We'll do a very basic postural assessment just to look at if there's any glaringly obvious issues going on, and also to see if there's any imbalances or things that we need to address in the training. So as it says there, this allows us to know what changes to make from a training perspective. If we're doing this online, then it's all done through photos, and we're going to go into some photos now to just show you what we're looking for. So some of the things we're looking for: have they got rounded shoulders? If your shoulders, it's hard to see on my camera, but if your shoulders are rounded forward, we tend to get this a lot of people who maybe drive a lot for a living, or who've done a lot of boxing, have got a big boxing background, so they've spent a lot of time with their guards up and their shoulders in. Their musculature just becomes used to being in that position, and they end up very rounded. And then when they train, this then leads on to other issues. You'll find someone who has rounded shoulders often can't build a big chest, or will struggle to develop their pec muscles, their chest muscles, but will end up having really big front delts and really big shoulders, because through pressing movements, because their shoulders are rounded forward, their shoulder comes into play a lot sooner than their chest does through most pressing movements, and they end up having overdeveloped shoulders and an underdeveloped chest. Knees pointing inwards. Possible issues squatting down the line. Are we going to see things like, you might see people when they squat and their knees come in together as they squat down? Big no-no in squatting. This is just going to lead on to knee issues down the line, and something we want to avoid. Standing lopsided. So if you notice someone maybe standing 1 foot heavier than the other over to one side, even if it's, you can see it's in the hip, but then you can notice in the shoulder, is one side more dominant than the other? Has there been an injury? Have they got a really quite an obvious weaker side? And do we need to address that? Next thing, Jane, I'm sure you'll be all over this. Anterior pelvic tilt. Have they got weak abs, weak glutes, weak hamstrings? Where's this coming from? What weaknesses do we need to address, as the anterior pelvic tilt will affect a lot of hip loading exercises, and we need strong hips to be able to have strong lifts in things like squats, like press deadlifts. And then one shoulder elevated, so one up, one down. Mine slightly, you can't really see it on the camera, mine is slightly. And is this just a weakness? Have they got weak traps? Have they got weak lats? If trying to identify which area of their upper back or shoulders is the weakness, and addressing that in an exercise or in a series of exercises. So some of the things that we do for this, if you've got rounded shoulders, we don't just focus on pulling exercises. Obviously, we do want the muscles around the back to be able to pull the shoulders back. But if the pec muscles have become accustomed to being in that shortened position, they're going to struggle to come back anyway. So we think about working the chest in a more lengthened position. So things like flies, adjustments to flies to change the load, which we'll come on to later on in the biomechanics, in the exercise mechanics part of it. But things that are going to lengthen that chest muscle, that pec muscle out, so that it is used to being in that lengthened position and being strong in that lengthened position. Knees pointing inwards. We look at focusing on glute strength and hip adductor strength to be able to stabilize the knees in squatting movements. To start, it's your glutes and your hip adductors what are holding your knees out. They're what's pulling your knees outwards. If they're not strong enough to do that with load, with a weight on your back, then your knees are going to cave in, because they're the weakness. It's not your legs, it's not your back that isn't strong enough to move the load. It's the fact that your glutes aren't strong enough to stop your knees from coming inwards. Standing lopsided, we need to develop strength in the less dominant side. So I stand slightly lopsided because I've had sciatica on my left side. So that whole left side just lost strength from the hip down. So now, sort of going off track a bit, but your body works in slings. So if you imagine down your back, all the left side of your back works in conjunction with the right side of the back of your leg. So right glute, right hamstring, right calf works with left lat going up the left side, and so on same the opposite way around. So my left glute, left hamstring become really weak, which meant the right side of my body, right lat, also become really weak and just weren't functioning properly. So I'm now a little bit off center, and it's quite noticeable in pictures. So that's something I'm now having to work on that less dominant side. Bless you, Jane. Anterior pelvic tilt. Just do hip thrust, basically. Learn how to do hip thrust properly. Learn how to do them safely, and get good at them and get strong at them. They are such a good all-round exercise for glutes, hamstrings, and core strength. If all three are working properly and are engaged, if you can properly engage your core, if you can properly engage your glutes, and you can properly engage your hamstrings through a hip thrust, through a variety of hip thrust exercises, you will be able to improve your anterior pelvic tilt and have a stronger hip. All of the muscles around your hip will become stronger, which will lead on to stronger squats, stronger deadlifts. Any movement involving your hip hinging, your hip moving, will become stronger through hip thrusts. I love them. They're just a really underused exercise for people who aren't on Instagram trying to get the bum out. If you are trying to sell a booty workout program, then you'll be hammering hip thrusts. But a lot of people just see them because they see the girls on Instagram with bands wrapped around their knees, think, oh, well, I don't want a big bum, so I'm not going to do them. There's so many other benefits that come from doing hip thrusts than just having a big bum. So they need to be utilized by everyone, really. One shoulder more elevated than the other. We need to think about doing single arm exercises. So single arm pulls and single arm pulls from different angles. So not just seated rows, but some form of lat pull down where you can fully lengthen the lat all the way up and you're able to pull down and activate it on whatever side is the less dominant side. So we're going to some pictures here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just have a look at them, and then anyone and everyone just jump in and tell me what you can see. If you were looking at these pictures, what would be an issue that you can see, and then I'll point out the things that we can see and that we addressed. So anyone, first thing, I'm expecting Jane to have spotted something here. You're getting tested now. You didn't think there was going to be a test, did you?
I mean, I know on the very first picture, I don't know whether or not it's just the way that she's stood, but shoulder is out, possibly hip, then maybe, I don't know. I do think she's got an anterior tilt. I don't know. On the last one with her back, shoulders look more even there, so I don't know whether the first one was just how she was stood for the photo or not. I don't know, but I imagine that she has a weaker core, the overstretched hamstrings, tight lower back, and maybe glutes turned off and stuff. I know wearing a raised shoe of any sort, I don't know much about shoes, trainers, but having some sort of raised heel can knock things off as well. But I think she's hyperextensive in her knees as well, so some of that it's going to be the same out of the trainers, but that I don't know what kind of trainers she has. Maybe they're perfectly suited, but she'll have those issues outside of that anyway, I think.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what the issues were that we addressed. And as soon as we started training, although we can see them in the pictures, this wasn't a one-to-one client, but we still done the photos.
What about the her right scapula? Is that because it doesn't look here like it's winged to where I would expect it to be, but is that, I mean, I don't know, is that just how she is? Because obviously we're not identical between both sides, are we?
No, that was it was the first photos we ever done with her, so she was just a little bit nervous, which is why I used the photo, because his shoulders in that look.
Oh, I mean, sorry, on the one with her back.
The centre one or the right one?
Sorry, the right one.
Yeah.
Yes, the back of her body. I didn't know whether or not she had something around the right shoulder blade, whether that's a weakness muscle. Again, or
just the way she was stood, because she was really nervous.
Oh, okay.
So this can be one thing. This was kind of why I put these photos in. So one, I knew you were going to be in here. I knew you'd be all over the stuff. But two, it's kind of...
I mean, I don't know everything. I wouldn't know. I mean, that might be how it is, because obviously we're not even through both sides of the body. I didn't know whether or not it was muscular or what, but just interested.
Yeah. sometimes it is just nerves. So obviously the anterior pelvic tilt's really obvious there, and you can even sort of see, try and do this without skipping a page, you can sort of see like it's almost like her stomach's bloated out. It's just not, it's just because her hips are tilted so forward and her abs are very they're very underused and like inactive. They're not lifting her hips up from the front, and her glutes, as you can see there, without her back having quite a big arch in, she just didn't really have any glutes at all when she started training with us. So that led on, then combine that with her knees, just meant that lower body wise, we had to focus on strengthening her glutes up massively and strengthening up her hamstrings for it to then be able to go on to be able to do any compound movements safely and effectively, to actually progress with them. So one of the first things we addressed was her strength in her glutes and her ability to activate her core during any lift, not just when doing like sit-ups or core-based exercises. So move on to the next one. Oh, actually, we'll go back. One I didn't mention there, sorry. If you look at hands, so if you look at the left-hand photo, although her shoulders are out of line, that was just a little bit of nerves. However, if you look where her thumb, I know it's quite hard to see, but if you look where her thumbs sort of point, so it would be her, as you look at the picture, her left hand and her right hand point slightly different directions. So the left hand, as you look at it, is pointing slightly in towards her midline. So this is where we'd identify that she's got slightly rounded shoulders, not massively to the extent where you'd see it on like a boxer. But again, it's something that we needed to address. She didn't have a lot of muscle overall. So just being able to build a stronger back and develop her chest muscles was enough to sort of correct this in quite a short period of time. But you can see it in the centre picture there, just as a sort of bra strap goes out of view, you can just see her shoulders slightly rounded forward. But it's just small things like that that we sort of look out for in the photos to be able to identify something. If we didn't address that and we just let that stay the way it was, there's a chance that that's just going to get worse, and you're just going to compound that issue by not strengthening up a chest and not strengthening up her upper back. And then going to do exactly the same again. Last one now, just a quick look through, and if there's anything you can see, now you've gone through the first one, if Hannah or Brendan can see anything on this one, just jump in. Go on, Jane, what can you see?
I mean, he does have a turnout of the feet. So I'm thinking he's going to possibly have restricted on his, I know it's not posture, but restricted maybe on the internal rotation of his hips. I more deal with women, to be honest. It's harder actually with a man because it just is. I'm used to looking more at women's bodies. I don't know whether or not he has a posterior tilt or not. Again, you know, women's and men's bodies are different. I think his left shoulder is raised. Yeah, his left. And then, yeah, so I'm thinking short and weak on his right side body, maybe. I don't know. Obviously, it depends on skin and how even it is. But, yeah, a few things. Yeah. Neck as well is quite...
Yeah,
I think he's got quite a kyphotic curve, and then his chin's lifting. So yeah, there's my points, right or wrong.
Yeah, so the kyphosis sort of, yeah, you can see that quite clearly. And then with the rounding of the shoulders as well, again, the hands pointing slightly different directions sort of highlights that rounding of the shoulders. We can spot it from the front before you even need to look at the side. No, his hips were quite level. However, with the feet turning out, for me, it was an indicator that his glutes were really weak, and you can see from the side that he just has no glutes at all. It's literally just straight down, like a straight line from his lower back into his legs. Spent a little bit of background, he spent a lot of his day sat down, sat at a desk in an office, didn't move around a lot, didn't play sports, wasn't very active, and so just wasn't needing to use his glutes, wasn't needing to develop strong glutes or strong legs, which has led on to how he is today with the rounded shoulders, elevated shoulder. And again, this is where we then need to address glutes, getting the strong glutes, and addressing single arm stuff from one side to the other to try and even out the strength differences from his left to his right. Yeah, that's fine, Jane. If you need to knock your camera off, that's completely fine. So, going to get into the exercise mechanics side of things now. So, as I said, it's going to get a bit nerdy. Force equals mass times acceleration. So, how much force you can produce is completely dependent on the mass and how quickly you can accelerate that. You'll also develop, when this crosses over into exercises, where you will develop momentum within an exercise. So if you move a weight too quickly, you will generate momentum, and then you may not have the strength to control that momentum. And that's why we focus on form so much in the exercise that we do. So a couple of things that we're going to cover: moment arms, angles, line of force, and pointer rotation. And then we're going to look at strength curves and resistance curves of exercises and how the two relate. So, lovely picture of me there, using a band, filming a home workout. So, hopefully this makes sense to you. If it doesn't, just jump in, let me know. So, my arm going from my shoulder joint out to my hand is the moment arm. This is the thing that is moving the weight. So if you are doing a chest press, the moment arm is from your shoulder to the weight. If you are on a cable machine, it is from where the cable leaves the machine to where your shoulder joint is. The line of force is the direction in which the weight or gravity is pulling you. So if you're doing a push-up, the line of force is directly down. If I was to be holding a dumbbell in my hand, the line of force would be directly down towards gravity. Because this is a band, if you imagine this would be the same on a cable machine, the weight, the band is pulling across in an angle towards my foot. So the line of force is across to where the pull is coming from. And then the point of rotation is simply where your joint is, or whichever joint is the weight is rotating through. So a load is at its heaviest when the line of force and the moment arm are at 90 degrees to each other. So as my arm gets a little bit lower there would be a 90-degree angle from the line of force and the moment arm. So when my hand gets to about there, that would be where that load is pulling heaviest on my where that load is heaviest. Is that where I'm gonna feel it being heaviest the most? Not necessarily, and that's why we design exercises to fit where we're strong and where we're not strong. So a little bit about muscles and how they work, if you don't know. A muscle is strongest in its mid-range. So if you look at my bicep now, when it's out, it's fully lengthened. That's its fully lengthened position. That's as long, the bicep from there to there, that's as long as it can be. And when it's all the way in, that's as short as it can be. So in that mid-range, from about there to there, is where it's strongest. So in this instance, from there, from where my hand is there to about here is where my shoulder, where my delta is going to be strongest. So this exercise is set up in a way that where the load is the heaviest, that's where I'm strongest. And then as I get weaker, so when I'm in the lengthened position and when I'm up at the top in the shortened position, the load is slightly lighter to accommodate for the fact that I'm slightly weaker in the shortened and lengthened positions. We try to do this on a lot of our exercises. The closer you can get your strength profile, so how strong your muscles are, to match the resistance profile of an exercise, the more effective it's going to be. So I have just said there, for an optimal exercise, you should aim to match your muscles' strength curve with the resistance curve of an exercise. So every exercise will have a point where it's heaviest, whether that's a bench press, whether that's a pull down, whatever it is, we'll have a point where it's lighter and where it's heavier. Every muscle has a point in its mid-range where it's strongest. Whatever muscle it is, your muscle is always strongest in its mid-range. So trying to match where your muscle's in its mid-range to where an exercise is heaviest is always going to be better for your results and for your progress. Another thing to consider when matching exercises to muscles is understanding what way the muscle fibers run inside the muscle and matching the exercise to those muscle fibers. So if you look at this image at the bottom, this is your pec attaching to your humerus, so your upper arm there. If you look at, there's 3 portions of the pec there, although it's all one muscle. The fibers all run slightly different directions. So if you're like me and you struggle to develop your upper chest, then you need to be trying to align your exercises with the fibers in your chest. So they're running across this way. So if I'm pressing, I need to be pressing to make those fibers go shorter by pulling into the center up here where they're going to get smaller. If I'm trying to hit the costal pec, them fibers that run down that way, I need to be bringing that in lower down there to be able to shorten the fibers from here to here rather than from here to here. Exactly the same for if you're trying to work your lats. Your lats pull your elbow down to your hip. So you can see them fibers running down from your armpit down towards your hip. For you to effectively shorten the lat fibers in the lower part of your lat, your elbow needs to be getting driven down towards your hip. If you're pulling it any other direction, if you're pulling it out behind you, you're pulling it over here, you're not matching the line, the line that the fibers run in that muscle, so you're not going to effectively train that muscle as well as you could if you match the movement to the line of the fibers. So that's the biomechanics nerdy bit out the way now. Hopefully that hasn't melted anyone's brain too much. If you've got any questions on it, please just fire them away. No, if not, okay, right. We'll jump into picking the right program. Oh, 1 second. No, we're good. Okay, so key training principles. Tom's touched on this already. Progressive overload, perfect form, and using the right exercises for you. Get those 3 things right, and you will progress in your training. So, progressive overload, forcing your body to change, forcing your muscles to change through progression and consistent progression. You can progress in 3 key areas, or 3 key areas we try to progress clients with. Either more reps, more load, so more weight, or the same load and the same reps with better form. So if you can squat 60 kilos but you know it looks awful and it feels awful, and your hips are everywhere, and your chest's caving in and your knees are caving in, then there's no point trying to progress more weight or more reps until you can progress your form. Although the weight's not going up, although the reps might come down, the weight might even come down. If your form's progressing, it's still progression, and it still forms part of progressive overload, which all of your exercises should do. You should be looking to progress every exercise and every movement you do every single time you train in one of these areas. So perfect form, it's a key to progression. Your form needs to be sort of uniform across all exercises. So every time whatever exercise it is, it should have its own set, unique form that you do the same every time. If you look at like Olympic powerlifters, when they set up for a squat or when they set up for a deadlift, they'll do the same thing every single time. They'll put their foot down the same way, they'll put their other foot down the same way, they'll line their hands up, and they'll grab the bar in the exact same way every single time. And that's because they've developed that pattern. That's where they're strongest, when they do it that way. And they can only progress by doing that the same way every time. If you go into, I'll use a chest press again for an example. If you're doing a chest press with dumbbells and you get 10 reps on 20 kilos, but on the 10th rep, you're going, and you throw them up. Did you get that 10th rep? Are you going to match that exact rep next time you do it? No, because your form broke. So your form needs to remain perfect. You need to fail on the exercise with perfect form, not fail because you couldn't wiggle and throw it up. Fail because you're trying to train your chest on that press and your chest physically couldn't press that up anymore, so you stopped. Once your form's uniform through that exercise, then you know when it's time to progress the weight or progress the reps, because the form's nailed. If your form's different every time, then it's a different exercise every time, and you're just never going to know when to progress the load or when to progress the reps. Something we do, whether it's in person or whether we're working with someone online, is get them to film their heaviest set to find where you need to improve. Everyone can do a perfect rep on a weight that's light for them. It's when the weight gets heavy, when the issues start showing themselves. I can't deadlift well. I can't really deadlift well at all at heavy weights. But if I was to put 5s on either side of an Olympic bar, I could show you a perfect deadlift. If you were to put 200 kilos on a deadlift bar and get me to lift it, there would be all sorts of horrible things going on. So it's only when that load is at your heaviest and where your heaviest weight is, where you're going to start seeing the discrepancies and you're going to start seeing the issues. So if you're going to film your sets, make sure you're filming your heaviest sets to find out where the issues are, because you're just not going to see it when you're doing a perfect set on a warm-up. Choose the right tools. So everyone knows the big 3. Everyone talks about it. Squat, deadlift, bench. Are they necessary for progress? Are they necessary for what we try and achieve, which is muscle hypertrophy, which is getting stronger for longer and growing bigger muscles? Yeah and no. If they work for you, yes. But is there a better exercise for you? So me personally, I've got quite long femurs, so my legs are really long, which means I'm not the best squatter. So should I keep just grinding away, try and get better at squats, or should I just find another exercise that I can do well and I can go heavy on, like a leg press? I haven't squatted in maybe 5, 6 years. I've like not been a knobhead. I can't get jeans that fit my quads without getting the stretchy ones. I've got big legs, so you don't need to squat to grow muscle and to progress. Same way you don't need to bench press to get a stronger chest or to get a bigger chest. There's a lot of things that factor into it, and just because they're the big 3 doesn't mean that they're the big 3 for you. Again, assessing your pictures and assessing your video recordings of your training are going to determine whether that exercise is for you. Skipping all kinds here, sorry. So, yeah, that's where we're up to. Picking the right program for you, an overview. The goal should be always to get stronger in all rep ranges, but keep uniform. Keep your form uniform across all those rep ranges, whether you're doing 12 reps, whether you're doing 30 reps, whether you're doing 5 reps. Your form should be exactly the same on all of them. And keep it simple. Master the basics and the basic movements before you start trying to add in all the crazy stuff that you see on Instagram. So pump it up. Basically, this is saying some muscles respond a little bit better to different type of stimulus. So quads, for me, respond well to heavy loads. However, muscles like calves, biceps, delts, smaller muscle groups respond a lot better to metabolic stuff. So high stress stuff, so high reps, where you're getting that horrible burny, crampy feeling in your muscles. And the reason you stop is because it's hurting and it's burning too much, not because you're just not strong enough to lift it. Like it says there, not every exercise needs a shit ton of weight. A leg press doesn't need a shitload of weight. A squat doesn't need a shitload of weight. This sort of carries over into the home exercise stuff now. Just because you haven't got a massive amount of weight at home doesn't mean you can't progress. This is where the smart thinking and the knowledge of exercise needs to come in, or the knowledge of how muscles work, to sort of challenge them in a new way. And creating more metabolic stress at home is a lot easier than trying to create stress from heavy loads, because we just don't have them unless you're going to go out and start trying to pick up the car. Your options are very limited for weight. So creating metabolic stress by things like putting in pre-exhaustive exercises, so doing a wall sit for 40 seconds before going into squats. But when you do the squats, doing the squats really slowly. I guarantee if you wall sit for 40 seconds, no matter how strong your legs are, if you do a wall sit for 40 seconds and then you do 10 squats, but you take 10 seconds to lower yourself down and 5 seconds to raise yourself back up on every single rep of those 10 squats, do 4 sets of that, your legs will be on fire. And that's with no weight, just because you've created metabolic stress and you've trained the muscles a little bit differently than you normally would. So designing a program for you, and how do you design the right program for you? What questions do you need to ask? Firstly, how many days a week are you going to train? You need to know how many days a week you're going to train to effectively know how you're going to hit the right muscles, the right amount of times, to then go in to know what each session is going to contain in those, say, 3 sessions a week. What split are you going to use is going to be determined by how many days a week you're going to be training and what your goal is. Your exercise selection is then going to be determined from your split. So if you're, say, doing a push-pull leg split, great. You train 3 days a week, you're going to do push, pull, legs. And your exercise selection will, on the pull, my traps are weak or my lats are weak. So I know I need to focus on those in the pull session. My hamstrings are really weak. So when it comes to the leg session, there needs to be a big focus on my hamstrings. And then sets, reps, and rest. What's the goal? What's the goal of each session? Not just the overall goal. What are you trying to achieve at the end of that session is going to determine how many sets, how many reps, and how much rest you have. So session frequency. Most average people need about 3 or 4 sessions a week to see progress. If you're completely new to the gym I would suggest 3 days a week and progress to 4 when you're recovering well from the 3. If you're an intermediate, you've been training 6 months, 2 years, 4 days is more than enough. You can push to 5 during dieting phases if you're really trying to push for progress and you're really trying to push for like a big transformation, but not for too long. If you're in a dieting phase and your calories are quite low, then this is going to impact your recovery, which will then lead into you not being able to recover properly from 5 sessions a week. Individual recovery is important. So how I recover between sessions is going to be completely different to how Tom does or to how any of you do. So figuring out for yourself how you feel at the end of a session is going to be massively important in your session frequency. There's a term known as MRV, maximum recoverable volume, and that's how much volume can you actively recover from in one session, and this varies from person to person. You might be able to do 20 sets across a whole session and the next day feel great, whereas I might do 12 sets in a whole session, wake up the next day and I'm in absolute agony and I need a rest day. It's just finding your maximum recoverable volume and not going to it every session. If you go to that point every session, then your recovery is just going to be absolutely knackered. So body part frequency, there's been multiple studies showing that muscles respond best and muscle hypertrophy occurs more when muscles are trained between 2 and 3 times a week. Maximally 3 times a week showed the most muscle hypertrophy, the most muscle growth. However, this isn't always an option for some people, but if you can train every muscle group at least twice in a 7-day cycle, it doesn't have to be Monday to Sunday, within 7 days of each other, then you're going to put yourself in a better position to progress. Like I says there, what's better over a week? 12 sets to overload a muscle or 36? If you're only training your biceps once, you're doing 3 sets on biceps a week, are you going to have arms as big as someone who's doing 9 sets on arms within 7 days? You're just not, because they're training them more. Vary the types of load you're using as well, especially if you're hitting the same muscles multiple times in a week. If you're doing heavy squats 3 times a week because you need to hit your quads 3 times a week, I guarantee after like even as short as a month, your knees are not going to be your mate. The different exercises are going to put different stresses on your joints, and it's important to not just hammer your joints with heavy loads every time you go to train them. So again, training smart. If you're, say, Monday you're doing legs and Thursday you're doing legs, don't both days put squats in, or don't both days put heavy leg press in. Maybe we'll come to this when we come to doing the splits later on. We'll dig a little bit more into it, but maybe Monday do a heavy leg day where the reps are lower and the weight's heavier, and then on the Thursday, the second leg day, doing a lighter, more metabolic session where the reps are higher, where you're trying to create metabolic stress and damage the muscle that way. So volume, 12 to 22 sets is a sweet spot for most people per session. Any more than 22 and you're starting to reach that MRV, that maximum recoverable volume, where you just can't recover between sessions. Obviously it varies person to person, but you're trying to trade off between muscle protein synthesis and muscle tissue breakdown. I know, yeah, Tom's laughing because I can never say that. Muscle protein synthesis, I'm just going to say MPS from now on, but that's the process of your muscles growing stronger and growing bigger. Too much volume, you will impede MPS and you will start to get muscle breakdown. this is going to impede recovery and it's going to impede your chances to grow. So just because you feel like you can do 30 sets in a session doesn't mean that you should, because repeating that over 2, 3, 4 weeks is actually going to be detrimental rather than seeing progress. So periodise your training. I don't mean this in a strength and conditioning way where they will have like mesocycles and stuff like that. I mean, as I was just talking about, changing, having a heavy session, then a light session, or having like a 6-week phase of like heavy loads on the knees, right, I'm going to back it off, go into metabolic stuff. Change each individual session's goal. So like I was saying, your Monday leg session might be focused on heavy loads and creating stress in the muscles through tension, through load. Whereas your second leg session of the week the goal might be to create metabolic stress, and more of like a pumpy pump session where you're just trying to get loads of blood into the muscles and make them really sore. And overall, just keep it simple. Stick to exercises that you're good at. Stick to exercises that you can get stronger and get strong at them. You don't need to chop and change exercises out all the time. You don't need to change your training program every 2 or 3 weeks. Find exercises that you're good at. Find exercises that don't hurt you. Find exercises that you can do comfortably and just get really fucking strong at them. So Tom's going to jump back in now because that's enough of me talking. I'm sick of my own voice. And he's going to talk through training splits.
Yep, cool. So training splits. So what is a split? So in relation to training, split is the training system which you adopt depending on which muscle groups you choose to target on particular days. So it's the system that you adopt, as Jack's just discussed, depending on how many training days you've got available to you and the ways in which you like to exercise and the system which you choose to adopt, which is going to be most beneficial for you. Okay, Jack, if you want to move that slide on for me. Cheers. So, a few popular training splits that I'm sure you will have heard of before, depending on your gym experience level. First one being full body, so this one being the most suitable for beginners or those with 3 or less gym days per week. Suitable for beginners in the sense that when you're new to the gym, a lot of the time you're not going to know the names of exercises, you're not even going to know what exercises are targeting which muscles when you do them. So full body aims to teach you the basics and the basic movements of each muscle group, and allows you to target multiple muscles in one session. And for those with 3 or less gym days per week, obviously it's the same benefit. You're able to target those muscle groups, as Jack has just said, ideally 2 or 3 times per week to maximize the potential for growth. So if you have only got those 3 gym days or less per week, then a full body split is useful to target as many muscle groups as possible in the time that you've got available when you're in the gym. Next one, push-pull legs. Suitable for the intermediate to advanced lifter and most effective with 6 gym days per week. I say that because you can do push-pull legs across 3 days, but if you do push-pull legs across 3 days, it's going to actually be more beneficial to you to do full body, because you will hit more muscle groups across those 3 sessions than if you just did a push-pull leg session across those 3 sessions. If you've got those 6 gym days available to you, then obviously you'll have 2 push days, 2 pull days, 2 leg days, and that's going to maximize the amount of volume that you're able to achieve across the week. We'll delve a bit more into these in a few later slides. The upper-lower split, suitable for all lifters. Ideally, if you have 4 gym days, again, just to get that volume in, you'd have 2 upper, 2 lower days. Really wouldn't be worth your time doing 1 upper and 1 lower day in the gym. If you were looking to progress, you would, again, just do the full body, as you'd be able to hit those muscle groups you'd be able to hit more volume across the muscle groups across those 2 days rather than just doing an upper-lower split. And the body part split, so this is the traditional bodybuilding split. If anyone's watched Pump and Iron, or if anyone you know, is a fan of classic bodybuilding, sort of the Schwarzenegger era and 70s, 80s sort of bodybuilding era, you would probably find that they were doing a chest day, back day, arm day, leg day, and shoulder day. As Jack has already identified, now with recent studies, we've found that hitting the muscle group and doing a complete all-out session on that one muscle group and then having 7 days to recover is not really optimal for growth. Generally, your muscles will recover in a much shorter period of time than 7 days. And so if you can get more volume in across the course of the 7 days, then you're going to give your body a greater opportunity for growth rather than just hitting each body part once within a 7-day period. Okay, Jack, can you move on for me, please? Thank you. So just breaking down full body a little bit more. Target as many muscle groups as possible per session. So ideally, you would look to incorporate in each of your full body sessions, depending on how many you had available to you across the course of your week. You'd look to incorporate as many exercises that are going to recruit as many muscles as possible, mainly focusing on compound lifts. So lifts are going to recruit a greater amount of muscles when you are executing them. It says they're suitable for beginner lifters. Obviously, as I've already mentioned, getting people into the gym, teaching them the basic movements, getting them to be able to have that volume of training and the volume of hitting each of the muscle groups across the course of a week, depending on how many days you've got available to them, is obviously more suited for beginners. Suitable for those with few days available to trainers. It allows for a greater training volume in a shorter space of time. So again, just reiterating that point of hitting as many of the muscles as much as you can across that 7-day period if you don't have the days available to you in the gym. Okay. So push-pull legs. Push day being chest, shoulders, and triceps. Pull day, back, biceps, and traps. And the final day is lower body, so everything, legs and bums. This allows you to hit muscle groups more than once per week, because ideally you would hit as I said before, the push-pull leg split would be for somebody who has 6 days available to them to train each week, which understandably a lot of people don't. But if you do have that time available to you, then the push-pull leg split is an excellent option to go for. Allows you to hit muscle groups more than once per week. Overall weekly volume increase. The overall weekly volume increase should see faster developments compared to a traditional body part split, so that chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs, obviously, because you're hitting each of the muscle groups more than once in the week. Overall volumes increased, and that should bring about greater changes in the body. Can also be utilized with those with only 3 days to train, but greater total volume the greater total volume will be achieved through 3 full body days. So as I said before, you'd be able to hit more muscle groups across 3 days with 3 full body days than you would with just a push-pull legs split. This is fast becoming the most widely adopted split within the bodybuilding world. As I said, traditionally 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know if anyone's into bodybuilding. I follow it. I personally follow it, but in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a lot of the bodybuilders of that era followed body part splits, so that chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs, thinking that was the most effective way for them to build muscle. And obviously, recently, throughout the 90s and the thousands, there's been more studies done that suggest obviously the greater volume. It seems obvious now, but it wasn't very obvious to them back then. The greater volume you can achieve within a 7-day period, as in the more you can hit muscle groups multiple times in 1 week, the greater amount of change you're going to be able to bring about. Okay. Move on for me, please, Jeff. Oh, we have. Upper lower. Exactly what it says on the tin. You have upper body days, so that would be shoulders, arms, back, chest, core if you want to throw that in as well, and your lower body days, so legs and bums. Each muscle group gets trained at least twice per week. as you would do a minimum of 2 upper body sessions and 2 lower body sessions. Again, if you only had 2 sessions available to you per week, you'd just do 2 full body sessions. It wouldn't be worth you doing an upper and a lower. I say it wouldn't be worth you doing. Obviously, any gym time is better than no gym time, but we want to maximize the returns that we're going to get from our gym time. So if we've got 2 days, do 2 full body days, because it's going to be greater overall volume from those 2 days than if we just did upper lower. So upper lower is suitable for people who've got at least 4 days per week to train. Again, they're hitting those muscle groups at least twice. And you can split these up into, I think, as Jack mentioned before, you could do a heavy day and a lighter day, or you could do a compound day and an isolation day, whatever it is. Across those 4 days, just about getting the overall volume in across the 7 days. Okay, as I said, workouts don't have to be the same. It's good to cycle them. So as I mentioned, heavy days, isolation days. Heavy days, light days, isolation days, compound days, that type of thing. It's very open-ended and can be easily tailored to your specific training preferences. Okay, you want to move on? Final one, which you've discussed a bit already, the body part split. This traditional bodybuilding split of chest, back, shoulders, arms, and legs across those 5 days. It allows you to completely exhaust a muscle group. So when you do a push day, for example, you're doing chest, shoulders, tries. Unless you're going to do 13 to 15 exercises in that session, you're not going to completely exhaust the particular muscle groups that you're hitting as much as if you did a body part split. But as Jack mentioned before, it's not about complete exhaustion, because we have to be within the limit to effectively recover in time for the next session. So although this does allow you to completely exhaust the muscle groups, generally that's not particularly what we're looking for. We're looking to stimulate the muscles to enough of a degree to bring about hypertrophy, therefore muscle gain and strength gain. It's good for getting a pump. So loads of blood forced into that muscle group. You're doing 5 or 6 exercises on the same muscle group. So it's good for forcing that blood in, because you're constantly targeting that one muscle group or certain areas of that one muscle group, depending on what muscle it is you're training. So it's good for pumping blood, but not optimal for growth, because it doesn't allow you to have that greater volume across the 7 days of your 7-day window. Your muscles are likely to be fully recovered after 3 days. So basically, when you train, 9 times out of 10, or depending on how you train, I think most people will find that they will feel ready to train that muscle group again after 3 days. So say you have done a chest day and you were doing this split and you did a chest day, your chest will generally be recovered and ready to be trained again after 3 days. But your chest then has to wait another 4 days after that before it is trained again. Obviously, if you could then hit that muscle group if you could hit that muscle group at the end of the rest period, so when it was fully recovered, say after the 3 days, and you could hit it again, then we're giving the muscles more stimulus and therefore more reason to change. Whereas if we've got to wait another 4 days and it's only getting 1 session per week, then we're not stimulating the muscle as much as we possibly could during the 7 days, and it's not going to bring about as much change as if we could increase the overall volume. Yeah, no worries, Jeff. Move on. Okay. So remember, as with philosophies, it's important to try different training splits and see what works for you, your body, and your schedule. Okay. So I think Jack's going to jump back in now and talk about the next few slides for us.
Yeah, so just quickly going to cover different training splits for training 3 days a week. So this is just some of the ways that we can set it up to get the most out of only having 3 days a week to train. So first one is an upper split. So if you're trying to develop your upper body more, Then, like I said, changing the stimulus as well. So upper body heavy, focusing with barbell work. Lower body, just full lower body workout, and then upper body light, maybe dumbbells and cables, stuff like that. There's upper lower full, again, trying to hit multiple muscles multiple times. As Tom's covered, just 3 full days, which is a great way of hitting all the muscles and getting that 3 sessions a week. And then if you just are trying to avoid your legs altogether, just 3 uppers and just rotating through chest, arms, back, shoulders, rotation. If your upper back or your upper body, is underdeveloped. So this is just an example of a full body split that we would use. So we're using supersets, again, just to maximize how much we can get done in a session. So 1A, a lower body push with an upper body pull, then a lower body pull with an upper body push, lower body pull, upper body pull, and then some form of strongman metabolic stuff at the end. So like prowler, something like that, something that's just going to get you a bit out of breath and just finish you off. Sorry, this is supposed to be 4, ignore that 3 times a week. This is 4 times a week, like a hypertrophy split. Upper, lower, as Tom said. Upper body heavy, lower body heavy. Upper light, lower light. A bit more of a bro split. Chest, back and delts heavy, leg and arms heavy. Chest, back and delts light, and then leg and arms light. Legs push, pull, and then legs push, pull, cycle. It's quite a nice split, that one, if you have got things that you are a little bit weaker on. So if you still want to hit your push pull legs, but maybe 1 week you need to focus on your hamstrings a little bit, or you need to focus on your chest or your shoulders, you can throw them into that 4th session. Quad, back, shoulders heavy, hamstring, chest, arms heavy, back and shoulders light, chest, arms, legs, and glute. There with the male and female, this is how we normally, for a lot of our female clients or male clients, vary that 4th session of the week. And then you've got your back and shoulders, chest and arms, back and shoulders, chest and arms. Again, just focusing on that upper body. This is just a breakdown of how we would lay out the sets and reps for one of the sessions in a 4-a-week split. So this is for chest, back and delts heavy. Just straight sets, no supersets. But again, it's going that push pull, jumping between each one. And then another variant, this is how we would do the chest, back and delts light within a 4-week split. So maybe changing to an incline press, putting some cables in there, varying the grips on the pull downs, putting in some single arm stuff and some lateral raises. 5 times a week. If you are going to train 5 times a week, this is how we would set it up. A couple of different variables. A couple of different varieties. So day 1, lower heavy, upper heavy, glutes pump, back and shoulders light, and then legs light. Again, trying to hit those multiple muscles multiple times. Got upper body heavy, lower body heavy, push, pull, legs light. Again, multiple sessions, multiple rotations of the same muscles within a 7-day period. And also programmed in a way that you're getting enough recovery between sessions and between muscle groups to come back around. When you do come back around to your next upper body heavy, you're not done in because you've just done the lower body. And then finally, upper body heavy, lower body heavy, back, shoulders light, chest, arms light, legs light. They're just a couple of examples of how you can program it to. As I said, these can get sent out to you afterwards if you want to look into them and get a little bit more, a few more ideas of how to set up your own training. So jump back over to Tom, and he's just going to take us through the glutes and James, feel free to jump in. I know you, I know you're big into your hip movements.
Yeah, so I got landed with glutes despite probably having the flatter arse out of the two of us. But to start with, we've got the physiological makeup of the glutes or the bum muscles. So we've got the gluteus maximus, which I think is the one that everyone knows. That's a nice big juicy one that hangs down. You've got the glute medius, your glute minimus, and your piriformis. They're the four main muscles of the glutes. And then there's also your hip muscles, which are also important in glute development as well. Going forward, please, yeah. Okay, so activation. So a lot of people struggle with activating their glutes, I mean, and being able to turn them on, in a sense, and being able to feel them when they're training. So opening up your hip flexors is one way to do it. So obviously, I'm in a seat at the moment, so I can't really show you, but if you imagine that your legs, we do that. That's called an abduction, and you've obviously seen that with the machine before. Opening up those hips will really help to activate your glute muscles, because that obviously external rotation of your legs causes the contraction of your glute muscles and causes the glute muscles to go from a lengthened position to a shortened position, thereby activating the muscles in them. Pelvic tilt, so Jack touched on this before, so this is more of a postural thing. Basically, if again I'm sat down, I can't really show you properly, but if your glutes are, if your pelvis is pushed backwards, your lower back is going to round, and you're not going to be able to really cause that activation in your glutes. If your pelvis is more pushed forwards, say pushed, it's not the correct word, but if the alignment of your pelvis is more forwards, and if you can cause that alignment of your pelvis to be forwards, that's going to cause greater activation in your glutes. You can do it yourself when you stand up. You push your pelvis back, you push your hips backwards, you'll find that your lower back starts to round and you'll feel pressure in your lower back. If you push them forwards, you'll feel the tightness start to alleviate in your lower back, and you'll feel the activation start to come in on your glutes. The glute bridge, so similar movement to a hip thrust, but it's not, because you're quite generally lying on the floor. Again, I would show you if I wasn't in my seat, but if you imagine you're lying down with your back flat on the floor and your knees at sort of a 45-degree angle, and then you are elevating your hips towards the, well, upwards, so that you go from, it's hard to explain without showing you, but basically you are just going from your bum and your lower back being flat on the floor, so your pelvis being elevated towards the sky, and squeezing your glutes at the top of that movement. We'll be able to find you a link to that. I would show you if I wasn't sat in this chair how to do those, but you've got the glute bridge and the single leg glute bridge. You can look them up, or we can give you some examples of those. Doing those prior to a leg session, prior to any glute session, any glute focused activity that you're going to be doing. The glute bridge and the single leg glute bridge are a great way to turn on those muscles in your bum. And then just actively focusing on and squeezing your glutes during things like deadlifts and squats. So anyone who's got a coach, anyone who's had any kind of PT before, anyone who's got knowledge of lower body training will know about squeezing your glutes through compound movements, compound lower body movements, and it's about creating that mind-muscle connection. So actively thinking, okay, I'm doing a deadlift or whatever it is that I'm doing. At the top of this movement, I need to push my pelvis forward, and I need to squeeze my glutes. And that, again, will bring about that activation that we're looking for. Okay, can you move on for me, please, Jack? Excuse me. Okay, so what has been proven to work for building the glute muscles? Squats being a huge one. Conventional squats, hack squats. I can't think of what that machine's called. But yeah, most variations of squats, as long as you can get that activation when you do them that we've just discussed, getting that squeeze at the top of the movement will really is a good way to build your bum muscles. Walking lunges, hip thrusts. Hip thrusts are a massive one. Always encourage hip thrusts if we're looking, or if our client is looking to build their glutes. Hip thrusts are a main compound movement that we go to for glute development. Various different deadlifts, so conventional sumo and Romanian, with a focus on sumo and Romanian, purely because there is more lower body engagement through a sumo and a Romanian deadlift, and specifically there's more of a glute engagement through them than a conventional deadlift, although the conventional deadlift with proper activation can be used to build glutes. Sumo and Romanian deadlifts definitely stimulate the glute muscles more. And then the Bulgarian split squat finally there. And as with everything, it's about volume for building any muscle group. So we've discussed this already. The more you can train a particular muscle group, the more you can effectively train it. And the more you can train it when it's already fully rested, the more of that muscle group is going to grow. Okay, Jack? So what doesn't work? Most of this stuff you'll probably see on Instagram, someone telling you that it does work, and they're also generally trying to sell you a protein and whatever clothing item that they've got on at the time. So Curtsy lunges being one, you've probably seen them before. It's kind of a variation of a reverse lunge, but basically, if you've ever seen anyone bow to the Queen, you do a curtsy, you do that, and you alternate from leg side to side. Leg press kickbacks, cable kickbacks. Most kickbacks do not actually work your glutes. There are certain ways to use kickbacks, but you will see all over Instagram people using leg presses, people using leg extension machines, people using cables to do kickbacks, all kinds of different kickbacks. It's an influencer thing. They don't really, they are not optimal for training your glutes. They are good looking on Instagram, and they sell products for people who generally have bum implants or whatever else, but they are not optimal training methods for building your glutes. Okay. Okay, so I think Jack's going to jump back in now and talk through the different splits for glutes.
Yeah, so just quickly touch on some of the solely glute focused programs that we might implement for people who are either trying to build bigger glutes because they want to have a bigger bum aesthetically, or who need to build glutes because it's a weak body part and it's letting down multiple other movements. So complete glute focus day, you can see over 7 days, full glute focus rest, and then again full glute focus 2 days in a row, and then 2 days rest. Got lower body, low to moderate reps, upper body, low to moderate reps, glute specific with a variety of reps, and upper body, moderate reps, lower body, moderate to high reps. This is day one order for a solely glute focused day. Glute ham raisers, wide stance, back squats, getting the hips nice and wide, trying to activate those glutes, trying to get nice and deep, getting plenty of flexion, so plenty of bend at the hip joint from your femur to your hip. Barbell hip thrusts, heavy. As you can see, these first couple of sets they're low weight, heavy reps, trying to put quite a lot of load through your glutes. Exercise 4, dumbbell RDL, focusing on squeezing the glutes and driving your hips forward on the way up on that RDL is essential to activating your glutes and making sure your glutes are doing a lot of the work. What also is quite effective is just slightly turn your knees out during the RDL. It doesn't have to be a massive amount, but just that little turn out with the knees can be enough of a cue to bring your glutes into it a lot more. Wide and high leg press, again, you're just reducing how much knee flexion, so you're reducing how much your knee bends, but you're increasing how much your hip bends, so your glutes are having to do a lot more work. And then Swiss ball crunch. Day 3, this is more of a metabolic, so higher rep exercises. Sumo deadlift, 3-second pause glute bridge, again, low reps, causing that muscle damage through heavy load initially, because trying to fatigue a muscle through metabolic stress on its own can be quite difficult without the muscle already being fatigued. So then glute emphasis back extension. This is on like a hip extension machine. It's one of my pet hates, using a hip extension machine wrong. I see it all the time. It's designed to train your glutes and not really designed to train your lower back through movement. So if you're doing the hip extension on the hip extension pads in the gym and you can feel it in your lower back, then you're doing it wrong and need to address it. Seated hip adductors, a horrible machine that hits in all the wrong places. And then dumbbell hip thrusters, 1 set of 50. Give that session a go. It is pretty grim. And then what have we got here? This is a more solely metabolic session on 12 to 15 reps on everything, hitting a little bit of hamstrings as well. So move on to, I know the time's getting on quite a bit now. We've only got 7 slides left. So I'm not going to keep you for too much longer. Men versus women. Differences in male training and female training. Essentially, not very much. There is some physiological stuff that is slightly different that's going on inside, but overall, the methodology and the approach to training is exactly the same. We're trying to train as hard as you can. As a female, you should still be trying to train as hard as you possibly can, trying to progress every single session. The progressive overload factor is exactly the same. Some things that do differ. Women can train at a lot higher volume. We men don't recover as quickly between sets as women do. As it says there, you can get away with a lot less rest as well. You generate a lot less metabolic stress in your muscles than men do, and you can also flush out that metabolic, that waste product a lot more efficiently than men can. So as a male, which is it's bad to use the example, like if I train with my missus, when we train together, I will be on the floor after, say, a hack squat for like 3 or 4 minutes, just in bits on the floor, because I've done my heaviest set. She'll jump on the hack squat, do a heavier set where she can't physically get out another rep. Like she's completely trained to failure, gets off, and she'll be good to go, like 30 seconds, a minute later. She could probably knock out her 3 sets on her heaviest weight in the time it's took me to recover from my first set. So you do recover a hell of a lot quicker, which means higher volume, less rest. 1 second, quick chat there. So also higher frequency, because females produce a lot less metabolic stress in the muscles, you generate less muscle damage. You also have lower testosterone levels, which means also sort of plays into the fact that you don't create as much damage within the muscles and can get away with training muscles a lot more regularly. So where certain females can be on a 5 session a week glute focused program and still progress, because you just won't get the same level of fatigue or the same level of muscles damage as a male would doing a solely 5 day a week glute focus session. only other things that really differ, apart from that, how much you can recover quicker and how we sort of create a little bit more muscle damage. There's generally some slightly different focuses for females training and males training. A lot of women will want to focus on glutes and also making their waist appear smaller to get that sort of hourglass figure. This can be achieved by creating rounder, more developed shoulders and larger glutes so that it appears like the waist's a lot thinner because the shoulders are wider. This is obviously carried on from bodybuilding, but it's sort of become like a thing now, just in general because of Instagram, social media and stuff like that. But apart from that, and I suppose also chest training. Do women need to train chest? Yes. You don't want muscle imbalances from having a weak chest. However, are there many women out there who want massive bulging pecs coming out from under their collarbone? Probably not. So you don't really need to train chest as much as a male does unless your goal is to be seriously strong at bench pressing or to have massive bulging pecs coming out from behind your boobs, which I've yet to meet anyone whose goal that is as a female. So yeah, that's probably the only other real difference. So we'll move on to weak body parts. How do we address it and why is it weak? So is it weak because you can't feel that muscle? Do you not have a neurological connection from your brain to that muscle to be able to contract it? Is it just not strong because you're just not training it? Or it's been injured, so you haven't been able to use it for a while, and that's the reason that it's weak, because it's underused. Are you using the wrong exercises? Have you been trying to squat for 4 years to get stronger legs, but your legs are still really weak when squats are shit for you, and you could have been on leg press for 4 months and been 3 times as strong as you are now because you picked the right exercises? Is it not a priority? So my calves are small compared to my legs because for a long time my calves weren't a priority, so they didn't grow because I didn't prioritize them. Or last one, are you just not doing enough? Are you not training hard enough when it comes to that muscle? You love training back, so you train really hard when it comes to training your back, but when it comes to training legs, you're just a bit like, oh, I'll just get through this session. So some methods we can use, DC trainer method. It is brutal. Dante Trude will come up with it. It's basically weighted stretching. It has been shown to improve recovery and improve fascia size, and it works on quads, triceps, back, chest, possibly plateau busting to help you get past sort of sticking points in certain exercises. I've used it for calves and it is disgusting. So essentially what you're doing is at the end of your session, so say you're doing a leg session, finish your whole leg session, and then what you're going to go and do is jump on a seated calf raise or a standing calf raise. You're going to put some weight on there and you're just literally going to hold that fully stretched position for as long as you physically can. We're talking like 60, 90 seconds. Rest, repeat 3 times. It's pretty bad. It's pretty painful. If you have got muscles that don't seem to grow or you're struggling to grow them, I would seriously try putting it in. It's painful, but it does work. And then last, we're going to go on to how to do a pull-up. If you can't currently do a pull-up, if it's something you're struggling with, this is sort of how we would approach it. It can be good psychologically because a pull-up is something that eludes a lot of people that they just can't do and they can't seem to figure out how to do it. Follow this process and and you can, if you follow it and you keep trying, you can successfully be able to teach yourself to do pull-ups. Step 1, start with pull downs. Learn to use your lats properly. This getting good at pull downs isn't going to mean that you're good at pull-ups, but it's going to teach you to use the right muscles that you need to use for a pull-up. So you're going to be able to learn to activate your lats. You're going to be able to activate your upper back. And then that will then lead on to the rest, that will lead into the pull-up. Move on to negative next. Build strength through the whole movement. So you don't want to just get stronger, be able to pull yourself up, but you need to have control through that lowering phase as well. Start with 3 to 5 reps, 5 to 10 second holds. Possibly progress by putting consistent tension in, so some pauses, add holds, or even add weight to your negatives and get really strong at those. Step 3, isometrics. So flexed hangs, reverse shrugs. So reverse shrug, that initial part of pull-up, where you drop your trapster, where your scapula retracts slightly. Just set to that and just get used to it, getting used to that initial movement. Again, 3 to 5 sets, 10 to 30 seconds on the flexed hangs. So where you're going into that and you're holding, trying to hold it for 10 to 30 seconds, back down. Number 4, go back. Number 4, assisted chin-ups. When I say assisted chin-ups, I don't mean the assisted pad in the gym. I mean a partner-assisted pull-up. So starting off with your partner, supporting your knees, helping you up from the knees, progressing that then to only supporting you from the waist, so they're less able to lift you up. And then finally being able to progress it to only supporting certain parts of the lift. So if you really struggle on that initial lift, then just giving you an initial lift until you get into the phase where you're a little bit stronger. Or if it's at the top where you're struggling to finish that rep, just helping you finish that rep, and then you control yourself on the way down. And then finally, banded chin-ups. So using a resistance band to take some of the load off. It's a really good confidence builder for building the motor patterns of being able to do a pull-up correctly without having to lift your full body weight up. You're still able to go through the movement correctly without anyone interfering, without the machine of an assisted dip machine interfering with it, and developing that movement properly without to then be able to progress to doing it without bands. So this is just a sort of setup over 4 days of how I would progress someone into being able to do a pull-up. Again, these slides will all be available afterwards, so I'll let you look through that, send them out to you. So how do we apply this in an online setting to people? Essentially, through right now in the current climate, how we've addressed it, video feedback's essential. In photos is essential, and adjusting tempos and getting creative with how we implement loads and how we create tension in muscles without having the massive amount of load from equipment in the gym as being an essential part of it. And the constant contact with people. We're not there now face to face to be able to ask, to see and assess how they're getting on. So that the reaching out and the contact with people needs to be just so much more, and is so much more, to be able to provide the same, if not a better level of service than we would when we were in person doing it. And that is us. So Jane, you're the only one who's lasted to the end. Have you got any questions for us?
I don't think so, to be honest.
No.
I think interesting on the pull-up stuff though. I mean, I can't say I've attempted one for for a long while. I think it's one of those really, because I'm quite light in weight, you know, but